It was a sunny spring day when Haruto was moving house. His childhood friend couldn't help but cry as she said goodbye to him. And before leaving, he promised her that when they grew up, he would come back for her. They would get married and be together forever. As the years passed, Haruto was distractedly traveling on a bus when suddenly the bus he was on lost control and got in the path of the oncoming train. In that moment, he remembered his promise and memories flooded his mind. Suddenly, he found himself in an unfamiliar house, in the body of a young man with long black hair. In the memories they called him Ryo and showed him practicing kendo. But the old man who trained him called him Haruto and scolded him for hesitating while fighting. Images of high school, of the bus, came to his mind. So he deduced that he had reincarnated in another era. Suddenly, some men burst in surprise to see him alive. They thought the fever from the day before would have killed him, and were happy about a job that earned them 10 gold coins. The men asked Haruto to wash himself, because his stench was ruining their appetite. Later, while eating some wild berries he had found, confused memories of his previous life came back to him like lightning bolts. He was an ordinary 20-year-old college student, until he died in that fateful accident. He was trying to understand who he really was, Haruto or Ryo, the strange name they called him now. He then remembered that in this era he lived in a poor neighborhood, firmly intent on avenging his murdered mother, killed when he was just a child. In that instant, Celia and 3 other girls appeared, anxiously looking for a small purple-haired girl. After very kindly introducing herself, Celia asked if he had by chance seen the lost girl. He said no. Celia added that they had to go to the lower neighborhood to look for her. Haruto warned them it was dangerous and that they should change their elegant clothes. The eldest, Vanessa, agreed, but Christina insisted they not waste time. Christina agreed to change her clothes, although she really didn't feel like it. But Vanessa remained worried, so she asked Celia to use her magical powers to make sure everything was calm. Celia did a quick spell and didn't detect any magic in the surroundings, only that from the boy who had an impressive mana. He was also left open-mouthed upon seeing himself surrounded by this light. Before leaving, Celia kindly gave him a bag with silver coins to thank him for the information. Celia is very kind and is the only one of the girls who treats him with respect, despite him being from the poor neighborhood. Upon seeing so much money, the boy ran home so it wouldn't get stolen from him. But when he arrived, he received a knife stab to the chest, which was blocked by the coins. He went inside and found his companions dead and a masked, hooded man. Right before receiving another blow, a spirit appeared to him and said she didn't have much time and would teach him to use his magic and mana. She told him to sharpen his senses, to activate his magical aura and become stronger. The boy started fighting against the assassin, dodging his attacks. Finally, he defeated him with one blow. After the fight, he heard noises coming from inside the men's sack. Inside was the small purple-haired girl the girls were looking for. She asked him to take her to her father at the castle to receive a juicy reward, but after seeing the men's bodies lying on the floor, she fainted. While on the way, Haruto met up with the girls again, but Christina slapped him believing he had lied to them about her sister. But the girl was safe and sound. Vanessa ordered him to accompany them to the castle to interrogate him, assuring him they would set him free if he was innocent. Meanwhile, some soldiers took away the detained assassin from the house. A mysterious hooded man in the crowd broke a device that killed the bandit and quickly slipped away. Already at the castle, Sub-Captain Charles interrogated the boy, demanding over and over that he reveal what he knew about the kidnapping, and threatening to strike him if he resisted. Meanwhile, the princess woke up with the girls, who were overjoyed to see her safe and sound. When she asked what was going on, Vanessa told her they were interrogating the boy about her kidnapping. But the princess clarified that he had rescued her and pleaded for them to bring him to her. Vanessa explained that they needed the king's order for that. Back with the poor boy, Charles was fed up with beating him without getting a single word out. A guard advised him not to be such a brute, or he was going to beat him to death. Charles angrily replied they had to clean up the royal guard's reputation for not having protected the princess well enough. Just then, the girls arrived, shocked to see the beating he was being given. Vanessa said this should be a polite, civilized interrogation. Celia asked them to release the young man at once, but Charles flat out refused, believing the boy was involved in the matter. Vanessa explained that the princess herself said she owed her life to the boy, so they had to let him go. Celia proceeded to heal his wounds with her magic, and the guards reluctantly left. The boy woke up in a palace bed next to Celia, who told him she had healed him with her powers. He asked what would happen now, and she explained he would have an audience with the king. She quickly taught him the protocol before appearing. At the audience, the king profusely thanked the boy for saving his daughter and allowed him to attend the academy with a scholarship. Then, Celia was upset to find out the boy couldn't read or write. She told him she would give him some lessons herself in the basement of the library. She also warned him he would be sharing classes with snooty noble children. He remarked that he knew that place quite well. She asked him to come to her if he had any problems. In his introduction to the classroom, the noble students were not at all happy to have someone of low class with them. It was revealed that the king himself had given him a scholarship. Upon introducing himself, a cocky child mocked him, saying at least Haruto knew how to speak like a servant, and everyone laughed at him. After some lessons, Celia left the boy some exercises. She told him not to overexert himself too much, but the arrogant nobles mocked him, saying he probably couldn't even read. In the laboratory, Celia got angry seeing him there, since she had left a very clear note saying not to bother her. But since the poor boy couldn't read, he went to her for tutoring. When he entered, he saw the mess of books she had. He remarked surprised that Celia had so many books for only being 12 years old. She explained that she had already graduated high school level. He said she was a really bright girl. To Celia's surprise, Haruto solved all the exercises very well. He said they were quite simple, and reminded him of his time at university in his past life. When she asked where he had learned, he replied that his mother had taught him. That night, Celia asked him how his day had gone. He didn't feel comfortable with all the boys laughing at him and seeing him as inferior, but he said everything was fine and asked for children's books to practice reading. In combat class, the boy put down his shield and surprised his teacher. He demonstrated great skill with the sword, remembering his kendo lessons. He was no ordinary boy. His ability and the way he used his sword was not that of a common person. The teacher told him he would surely become a great knight, but he declined joining the Knights Guild, leaving his classmates speechless. After all, it's an honor to aspire to be chosen by that guild after finishing one's studies. At the end of class, Haruto finds himself recalling his childhood friend, a memory interrupted by the scornful glares of his classmates, who looked down on him for being poor and not of noble birth. Later in his room, he reflects on his friend, from who he was separated when his parents divorced in his previous life, and tells of a brief reunion in high school, after which she seemed to vanish, never returning to school. The next day, the announcement board shows Haruto received the highest grades, along with Princess Christina, causing disbelief. The blonde-haired boy and his friends become angry, unable to accept this. When Haruto arrives, they question what kind of cheats he used to achieve such high grades. Haruto insists he simply attended class like everyone else, but the boy, now revealed as Alphonse, calls him a liar. A blonde girl intervenes, chiding Alphonse that envy isn't fitting for a gentleman. He retorts that he won't tolerate such injustice, but when she asks for proof of cheating, he falls silent, unable to respond. At this moment, the teacher Celia appears, affirming that Haruto's grades are a product of his hard work, having seen the time he spent studying. Celia congratulates Haruto on his good grades. She expresses feeling bad about how the other students treat him. She tells him that she went through something similar, but unlike him, she did have friends. He responds that she shouldn't worry, and that having her as a friend is enough. This makes Celia nervous, and she asks him if he's treating her like a child. After joking about Celia's short stature, a nice friendship begins between them. 5 years later, in combat class, the teacher announces a tournament with the Knights of the Kingdom. He reveals that Alphonse, Stuart, and Haruto will represent the class. This angers Alphonse, who considers it a dishonor for someone without magic like Haruto to participate. The teacher does not accept complaints. Later, Celia tells Haruto that she heard about his participation in the tournament. She comments that the knights could recruit him even before graduating if he does well. After joking about Celia's short stature, she asks Haruto what his plans are after graduating, since it seems like he is not interested in becoming a knight. Haruto responds that he wants to travel to his parents' homeland, called Yagumo, because this country does not give him an easy life. In light of this, Celia offers for him to stay and work with her, but he politely declines the offer. Look, Haruto maintains a very proper and humble attitude throughout the anime. I get that some people probably want him to get revenge on all the ones who have treated him badly, but his moment will come eventually. What matters most to him are his friendships. He's not interested in being the most powerful or constantly having to prove himself. Back to the story, Celia asks Haruto if the place he will travel to is where his mother died years ago. Haruto confirms yes, and Celia seems very worried for him. He remembers when his mother told him she would one day take him to visit his grandparents. With a worried look, Celia watches Haruto leave. Her thoughts turn to the tournament, and the story shifts to days later, where tension mounts on the battlefield. At the tournament, the referee turns out to be Alfred, the king's right-hand man. Before his match, Alphonse arrogantly tells Haruto not to embarrass himself and overshadow Alphonse's own fight. However, Haruto pays him no mind. Haruto's opponent turns out to be Charles, the deputy captain who tortured him in the past. Seeing him, Charles mocks having to face the filthy boy. The match begins. Charles is insulted that Haruto uses no shield and has a strange stance, but the others are amazed by Haruto's skill with the sword. Furious, Charles blames Haruto for his demotion 5 years ago. Concerned, Celia fears that facing a kingdom knight might be too much for Haruto. How could they pit a seasoned warrior against a mere student? Her heart aches for her friend, but she watches in awe as Haruto skillfully disarms Charles, winning the match. Flustered, Charles complains about having let his guard down. Alfred yells at him to accept defeat, that a knight must know how to lose. That night, already drunk, Charles laments not having gone all out, though we all know that wasn't true. A noble accompanying him, the Empire's ambassador, tells him it's fine if the students get glory every now and then. Charles tells him that the brat was under suspicion of kidnapping the princess 5 years ago, and that despite interrogating him, he refused to say anything. We get a small glimpse that the ambassador was the hooded man who killed the bandit back then. Life at school goes on, and Haruto's victory has caught the eye of more than just a few people. The next day, we see Celia waiting for the boy to get out of class to celebrate his victory. She can see him going to the back of the school where he meets with a girl who gives him a love letter to confess. After this, the girl runs off, making Celia blush and get a little jealous. Celia notices that Haruto is the only one without plans after graduating. She remembers he told her he'd visit his parents' homeland. In magic class, this boy, arrogant as always, says the spell is super easy, and everyone should know it, except for Haruto, of course, who has no magic. Celia asks them to show if they really control it. The students do it, a basic spell. The strength depends on each one. After watching them, Celia is like, "Is this your level? You think you'll pass the exams like this? You've learned nothing." Then she gives an impressive demonstration. Haruto explains he can't do spells like the others, but imitates the magical flow. Then, Stuart, who doesn't get tired of making life hard for Haruto, tells him he seems to be flirting with the girls and only won the tournament by luck. "But what are you saying? Haruto has never been like that with me. We are very good friends and he respects me." In the outdoor trial, Alphonse explains the groups have to reach the finish by the shortest route before sunset. Good performance will benefit their grades, so they better work hard. A girl says it'll be tough with the mountains and woods. It'll take twice as long. But Alphonse planned a special route. Stuart mentioned soldiers from his guild, told him about a shortcut using animal trails. The girl thinks that's cheating, but Alphonse says information is everything in war and asks Christina's opinion. Christina agrees since Alphonse is in command here. Stuart tells Haruto he should be grateful that despite being useless without magic, they found a use for him carrying luggage. Haruto accepts and lugs the stuff around. Later, Christina offers help, but he politely refuses. Further ahead, they're attacked by goblins. Alphonse orders the vanguard to use artifacts to enhance their physical abilities, and they defeat the goblins, no problem. They tell Haruto to keep moving forward. We see the Imperial ambassador spying hidden. He's surprised Haruto almost noticed him. He thinks to test Haruto's abilities. The group is glad to see the forest exit, thinking they finished. But there's a cliff between them and the goal. Christina asks Alphonse, "What now, genius?" Suddenly, a spear impacts near them. Orcs attack! Alphonse orders to block spears with shields. Haruto blocks with his sword, but Stuart injures his leg and stumbles, accidentally pushing Christina off the cliff. Haruto jumps after Christina, surrounds her with magic to lift her up and save her, but he falls down the cliff. Above, they attack and defend against the orcs' intense fight. Meanwhile, we see Haruto unharmed at the cliff bottom. Haruto wonders if the others will be suspicious seeing he's got no injuries after the fall. He remembers the magical power with which he saved Princess Christina and himself, not knowing where that ability came from. For a sec, he also recalls the spirit that saved him from the assassin years ago. Back with the group, they argue blaming Stuart for pushing Christina off the cliff. Stuart's like he stumbled into her because he got pushed. Then he decides to lie and blame Haruto, saying Haruto shoved him out of fear of the monsters, making him crash into Christina. Alphonse buys the story and says Haruto jumped after Christina to save her, worried about being accused of killing her. But Christina's like, no way. Haruto was only trying to help. Still, Stuart keeps turning the group against Haruto. Christina asks if now's really the time to play the blame game. Alphonse says they gotta get out of the woods first. Angrily, Princess Flora asks if they plan to ditch Haruto. Alphonse is like he deserves it. Hearing this, Flora says if nobody helps Haruto, she'll go alone. Her companions are surprised and say they'll send a search party after finishing the trial. Then, they're suddenly interrupted by a loud roar from the forest. A massive Minotaur appears, leaping between the trees. Christina quickly attacks it with a spell, but it does nothing. They hurriedly get the vanguard to enhance their physical strength. Seeing that spell doesn't work, they realize they must join together to cast a much more powerful spell. But the Minotaur is incredibly strong, and they can do nothing against it, as it easily knocks back those who attack. Alphonse urgently orders a retreat. A blonde girl tells Christina she's gotta escape right away. Christina frantically asks about her sister Flora, but the girl says she surely must have already escaped. Meanwhile, Flora is healing an injured companion when she is discovered by the raging Minotaur, which then attacks her. Suddenly, Haruto appears and cuts off one of the Minotaur's arms, yelling for Flora to escape immediately with the injured one. Haruto now faces off alone against the ferocious beast. After exchanging intense blows and realizing it is astonishingly fast and resilient, Haruto finally finds a brief opening and seizes the opportunity to cut off the Minotaur's head. Just then, students appear to desperately check if Flora is okay. In the commotion, Haruto swiftly disappears into the trees. Having observed the battle, the ambassador was able to verify Haruto's impressive abilities, and now understands why he masters the spiritual arts. Satisfied, he then flies away. That afternoon, Celia is mad because the principal gave her a ton of work. In the halls, she overhears them talking about missing Haruto and Princess Flora defending him. Stuart's with the principal saying how Flora's attitude jeopardizes their prestige. The principal takes the chance to blame Haruto and puts the Duke in charge, who smiles evilly. Celia's worried about what could have happened to Haruto. That night, Haruto goes to Celia. She hugs him, relieved. She tells him what happened and the conspiracy they're plotting, and that they wouldn't believe him as a commoner. He thanks her for their friendship and says goodbye to start his journey, saying he'll send letters signed with his real name, Haruto. They share one last hug, Celia cries, remembering their moments together, and that she'll eagerly await his letters. In the dungeons, the Duke shows the beast girl Latifa one of Haruto's belongings so she can find and kill him. 3 days later, we see Haruto on his journey. He jumps over an orc and keeps going until he reaches the neighboring kingdom, specifically the merchant city. Life here revolves around economy and commerce. He checks there's no wanted posters of him. Latifa follows him from afar. Haruto senses her but doesn't see her because she hid. A vendor offers pasta. Haruto remembers it existed in his old world and didn't know it already existed in this era. The vendor says the governor of the city invented it. Haruto tries the pasta, loves it, and brings back memories. He wonders if the governor is from the same previous world as him. Then, Haruto recalls his mother said he'd visit Yagumo when he grew up. He says he wants to visit his parents' city. Haruto spent the night in the city. The next morning, he wrote a letter to Celia explaining that everything was going very well on his journey, and that he wouldn't be able to send any more letters until reaching his next destination. He told her that if she didn't hear from him, it meant all was well. After this, Haruto packed his backpack with supplies and left the city. As he continued his way through the forest, Haruto came across a girl lying on the ground. When he went to help her, she quickly reacted by attacking him with a poison dart. Haruto managed to dodge it, and after exchanging some blows, he started feeling dizzy from the poison. That's when he realized his attacker was a beast girl. Quickly, he used a spell to neutralize the poison, which clearly surprised the girl. She continued repeatedly attacking him with a dagger. An intense combat began, in which they both demonstrated great agility and skill in dodging each other's blows. At one point, the Beast Girl decided to enhance her physical abilities with an incantation. This impressed Haruto, given that she had already shown great skill without needing to empower herself. She didn't understand how he could be so fast just being a human. After analyzing her movements, Haruto realized she depended too much on her daggers. So after dodging some more blows, he caught her off guard, neutralized her, and disarmed her, knocking her to the ground. Latifa thought she was going to die, but Haruto only left her unconscious with a spell. Then he removed her weapons and noticed she was wearing a slave collar. He remembered a spell he had read and tried to copy the incantation to neutralize it and remove the collar. At that moment, Haruto had a vision of Latifa's past. It was revealed that she was the girl who died with him in the bus accident in Japan before reincarnating. She had awakened with the body of a beast girl and as a slave. We see that Stuart, Haruto's former classmate, was the one who had her chained. He forced her to say they were siblings and tortured her with the collar to make her obey. When Latifa woke up, she was scared to see Haruto. He explained that he had her tied up so she wouldn't attack him, and warned her to stay calm if she didn't want to die. Latifa realized Haruto had removed the collar. He explained she wouldn't feel pain from the collar anymore, and this made her cry with happiness at feeling free. When he asked for the name of who controlled her, she responded that she didn't know, but her supposed brother's name was Stuart. This made Haruto remember his former classmate with the same name. Haruto freed Latifa and told her that her belongings were next to her clothes. Now that she didn't have the controlling collar, she was free. Since semi-humans were enslaved in that kingdom, he recommended she go east, to a region where humans and semi-humans coexisted. She was sad. She had never been free. She didn't know what to do. He left warning her he would show no mercy if she attacked him again. She followed him from a distance. Haruto noticed and asked if they still had unfinished business, but the girl just wanted to accompany him. He had only freed her out of convenience, and as a human, she should fear him. Humans already enslaved semi-humans. She was not afraid. She thought he was good. He said he wasn't angry because she couldn't disobey due to the collar, but he had no guarantee she wouldn't attack again. That's why he still couldn't trust her. Latifa begged him to put the collar back on her, saying that although it caused her pain, being alone seemed worse due to the fear she felt. She begged to accompany him. Haruto told her to do as she pleased, but to throw away that collar. Later, Latifa cried with happiness when tasting a sandwich, since before she had only been given pet food. Then we see Haruto and Latifa traveling together through various territories until they stop because she is tired. They camp, and Celia receives Haruto's letter saying they are fine. One night, while Haruto and Latifa cook spaghetti, he notices she knows what it is. He asks if she has eaten it before. She says she believes so. This makes Haruto suspect the girl also came from Japan, like him. At night, Haruto wakes up hearing Latifa crying and sleep-talking, saying she wants to go back to her family in Tokyo. This confirmed the boy's suspicions, and he comforted her by tucking her in with clothes to calm her down. In the morning, Latifa wakes up embarrassed to see him sleeping next to her, and is surprised because he has black hair, just like the boy who died with her on the bus. When he wakes up after a misunderstanding, the girl asks if she can call him brother from now on. He is saddened, thinking the girl was turned into a slave as soon as she was reborn in this world, so maybe if he accepts it, could comfort her a little. She agrees, so after that, they continue their journey towards the lands where humans and semi-humans coexist. And after overcoming a couple problems across varied landscapes, several days go by. Upon waking up, he asks Latifa what she wants for breakfast, and after that, asks if she really can't see the giant tree they have in front of them. The next morning, Haruto asks Latifa if she can see the big sacred tree nearby, but she says she only sees a normal forest. Haruto thinks maybe they are hiding the tree with magic. Later, when he's about to go into the woods, Latifa asks him, scared if they won't get lost. Once inside, she comments, there's a weird smell she doesn't recognize. She says there's more than one smell, and they aren't from animals. Haruto asks her if the origin of those smells is close. She responds quite far away. They decide to rest there, seeming they are getting close to their destination. Latifa is suddenly happy to leave the forest. That night, Latifa has another nightmare, and Haruto calms her with a spell. But just then, the campfire suddenly goes out. Upon leaving the tent, Haruto finds himself face to face with a large wolf, emitting a blinding light.